Every time, but aren't they amazing? Children are amazing. If you have a voice, you have a testimony. And if you have a testimony, you have a weapon. And if you have a weapon, you can defeat the enemy. John, writing in Revelation 12:11, says this, and they defeated him, the enemy, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Not one or the other, but both together. The blood of the Lamb was shed at Calvary that we might have a way back to God. He said Jesus robbed the devil of the keys of hell and death. He rose again on the third day. You see, the devil was defeated. The devil was defeated. But Peter says in 1 Peter 5:8 that he still goes round like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. And that is where our testimony comes in. Jesus has already defeated him. But if you listen to what he says, he will defeat you. And you need to use the word of your testimony to defeat him. Now, our testimony comes in two parts. There is a universal testimony that we all share, which is in this book. It is the truth. And what does Jesus say about the truth? It sets you free. The truth sets you free. So there is a universal testimony we all have. But then there's an individual testimony that we have. When God speaks to you individually through either his word or the worship or a word of encouragement from somebody. And that is individual to you. And that is as important as the universal testimony that we all share. And it is those two things that we use to confront and to disarm the enemy when he comes against us. The word of our testimony. Jesus defeated him. We need to say, this is the truth. This is what God says. And that's why it's so important we know the word. We know the word. We had a great time last week at the prayer meeting. There was some great worship. There was some good testimony. And as we read through Psalm 118, Beth asked us to write down anything that spoke to you individually as we went. Now, I know some people wrote a lot down. I wrote nothing. I just sat and I listened. And it wasn't right until the end of the meeting that verse 22 of Psalm 118 stood out to me. And it said this, the stone the builders rejected has become the capstone, okay, or the chief cornerstone. The stone the builder rejected has become the chief cornerstone. And I went home and I got my King James Version out and I read it in the King James Version. And it says this, the stone the builders refused became the chief cornerstone or the capstone. And I sat down and I started to think, well, what is the difference between rejecting and refusing? And I think it boils down to this. When we refuse something, we probably know it's true. And we do not accept. And we say, no, I'm not having that. It may be true, but I'm refusing it. When we reject something, we actually are stating that it's not true. We don't believe it. So I started to wonder, why is it then that in the King James it says refuse as opposed to reject? And the interesting thing is that maybe the Jews at the time actually had an inkling that he was the Messiah. He was the King of Kings. He was who he claimed to be because of what he said and what he did. And therefore they refused him. Because if they refused him, he couldn't jeopardize everything they desired and set up themselves. And it's changed to reject, which suggests that it was cut and dried. They didn't accept, they didn't believe. Because you see, I think that in everybody's heart, there is a little belief. I don't think anybody can be completely atheistic in their view. They don't reject Jesus in that sense. They refuse to accept what he did on the cross on their behalf. They refuse to believe. They refuse to believe. And so then I started to investigate the importance of the capstone or the foundation stone. And it was so vital to the building of that time. It set everything in alignment. If it wasn't right, the building was crooked. It had to be a stone without flaw to actually support the walls on which were going to be built on it. And when we think about that, we can see that actually that's exactly what Jesus is. He aligns us with the Father. He makes sure nothing is out of kilter. And it's no different today than it was then. The foundation stone hasn't moved. It hasn't weakened. It is still the same. It is still the cornerstone, the capstone on which we build our lives. And it is that stone that keeps our alignment, our relationship with the Father in true direction. I was going into town just before Christmas. I was going to the opticians. And I took Judah, and I don't know about you, I hate paying for parking. And I will find any spot that you don't have to pay. Parking for 1 hour, don't return in 2. Parking for 2 hours, don't return in 4. And I will hunt them out. And I'd rather walk than pay. And we found, Judah and I found the last parking spot near the Riverdale Retail Park, the 1 hour spot, and we were going to walk into town. So we parked, we got out, and we walked into town. It took us about a quarter of an hour. Went to the opticians, and that took about half an hour. And then we had to walk back. Now, I know what you're thinking, but it's not. And when I got to the Riverdale, when I got to the park, we walked up and I started to look, my car door was open. The driver's door was open right across the pavement. In fact, people were squeezing by in between the houses and the thing. And I thought, oh no. Oh no. Someone has been in the car. Anyway, we walked up and we got back and we looked. And nothing was missing as far as I could see. And I've not found anything missing up to this time. All my tools were still there, and 1 or 2 of Judah's toys, everything was there. You see, it's the last thing you expect to find when you're coming back to your car after you've parked, to find your door wide open. I don't think any of us park and expect to see that. And so then I started thinking about, well, how did that happen? Did I not lock the door and someone tried it and got in? And then I thought, maybe what I'd done was I'd locked the door, or thought I'd locked it, tried it and not realized it was open, and then just walked off, and the door, because we're on a hill, just slowly opened. But no one, it was like that for an hour, and no one bothered to close it. And then I asked myself the question, would I have closed the door of a car? That's the question. But that is the least expected thing that I would expect when you come back to a parked car. But you see, Jesus tells a parable in Luke 15, verse 11, about two sons. We know it as the prodigal son, but it's probably the prodigal sons, actually, because they were both prodigal in one way or another. And the younger one said to his father, he said, "Give me my inheritance now." And in those days, that was tantamount to saying, "I wish you were dead. I wish you were dead." And the father, rather than saying, "No, you're not having it now," he said, "Yes." And he gave him his inheritance. And the moment that son turned his back on the father, he started going downhill. It went downhill from there. It didn't happen immediately. And when we wander away from the Father, it doesn't happen immediately. But as he went on, and he said he spent his money on riotous living, he got further and further away from the Father, until he was at his bottom. He didn't know where to turn. And he said to himself, he said, "Well, even my father's servants are better than this. They have more food than I do." And he decided in his heart that he was going to return. Now, in the natural, you've just been told that "I wish you were dead." How often would you hold out your arms to receive back someone who's obviously rejected you? But you see, God the Father always leaves an open door. And however far we wander, within the time scale of what we have, that door is always open. And what's more, even though we turn our back on him, he never turns his back on us. In fact, he went out each day to look to see if his son was returning home. And when he saw him, eventually, he ran to meet him and put his arms around him and welcomed him back. And the son said, "I'm not worthy. I've sinned against you and I've sinned against God." But he said, you are forgiven. You are forgiven. Let's have a party. Put a ring on and a cloak on. You see, God is about restoration. That is the Father heart of God. Restoring that which was lost, that which has gone astray. You see, and even though the Son rejected the Father did not reject the Son. You see, we can allow ourselves to be silenced. We can allow ourselves to be silenced. And if we are silenced and we don't share our testimony, don't claim what we believe on a regular basis, then we start to lose hope. And if we lose hope, we feel rejected. But you see, there's always hope in the Father. "I have come that you may have life and have it to the full." He who the Son sets free is free indeed. And so, on this Father's Day, let us not forget what the Father's heart is. He took that which was rejected, and on it he built a spiritual foundation, the church, that is in alignment with what God wants and is the conduit through which we renew our relationship with him. He wants that relationship with each and every one of us. But our testimony is so important. So when we are confronted with disappointment, with discouragement, we need to take hold of what the Word says and claim it for our lives. Because he goes round like a roaring lion, He is not a roaring lion. Jesus said, I have come that you might be free. I have come that you might be free. Not harassed, not bound, but free. And that is our testimony. And it says, we defeat the enemy by the blood of the Lamb that he did on the cross and the word of our testimony. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. That is the Father's heart.